Hello everyone and welcome to the November ALLi Hangout Q&A with me, Joanna Penn, and Orna Ross. Hi Orna.
Hi Joanna, our final one of 2015.
I know, don't say it. Don't say it. I can't believe that we're almost like at 2016. Oh, it's just crazy. It really is. Right, so today we have lots. We've obviously been doing loads, and we're going to first of all, as ever, do a bit of an update, so you know we don't just talk a good game, we're actually getting on with things. So Orna, I know that there is, first of all, you've got an update around the Choosing a Self-Publishing service book, which I personally recommend at least 5 times a week. So tell us about that.
Oh, fantastic. Yeah, well, it is unique because it is the only regularly updated guide to the entire self-publishing sector and the various services that are available. And a lot of work went into this particular update. We've actually been working on this all year. So Jim Giamateo, who most of you will know is out ill at the moment. Jim did a lot of work on this before he left, and the work continued kind of thing. So we're looking at direct services and assisted services. That's the first kind of big split. And we rate good services and we rate the not so good services, talk about what people need to look out for in a service. And a huge amount happened in the self-publishing service space in 2015. I think of it as the year where this whole area kind of finally settled. And I don't think, you know, when ALLi started, there was this sense that services came, services left, and it just kind of, there was no sense of stability whatsoever. Whereas I feel now the main players are settled. We all know who they are. We all know it's not easy to sell books for anybody, Amazon included. Everybody, you know, works hard in this area and have laid out their stall, if you like. Of course, Amazon, through the big change in, and will continue to change, we're all changing. I'm not implying that we're sitting still, but the enormous great shifts, I think, have kind of settled down. So big things that happened, the KU shift, whole question of exclusivity is something we go into a huge amount in the guide. You know, when is it worth actually giving somebody exclusive rights to your work and why you might do that? And also some very interesting new services in the space. So, for example, we presented the award for 2016 to Draft to Digital distributor, a great newcomer to the scene who was doing, you know, and still is doing fantastic work. And then within a couple of weeks, there was this whole another new player on the scene called Publish Drive, who is Hungarian, actually, based and very globally focused and doing very interesting things. So while, you know, there is still change and there are still new services coming and going, I think the big divide is clear now. You either go direct as much as you can and use distributors like Draft Digital, like Smashwords, like Publish Drive to reach the hard to reach places, but you go direct to Amazon, Kobo, Ingram, and so on, or else you look for support and service. And in that area, we're looking at the new digital imprints, the agent-assisted services, as well as the big package providers. And of course, the big unmentionable that we won't talk about. We have some interesting correspondence around that as well. So lots and lots in there. It's we tried to make it a book that works for everybody, whether you're starting out or well along. People have the impression that it's just for beginners making that first decision. It's actually goes much more deeply than that. So yeah, hopefully people will get a lot from it and will give their usual level of feedback, which will help us to make it better next time. Yeah,
and I've just written a note, you know, to review it because, you know, I think I'm up on the industry and I had never heard of Publish Drive, and Orna's just mentioned it and I'm like, oh, just having a look, you know. and you know, in terms of when you're, I actually have just interviewed Dan Wood from Draft to Digital for the podcast, which is coming up. And one of the things I said was I get pitched all the time for these new services, and the hardest thing is figuring out who is worthwhile and who is just fly by night or trying to make a business, like trying to rip off authors. That's when it comes down to it, you've got to figure that out. And all I do now is I refer people to choosing a self-publishing service. And I'm like, the reason that ALLi exists, one of the reasons, is to be able to sift out what is good for authors and what is not good for authors. So that's why this is so good. And we should also say that you will overwrite the old version. So if people own the old version, you just have to go into your settings. Like if you have a Kindle, you go into your settings and you just click update, and it will update the version. As a user, you do that now, and it will update the version. And I believe the other readers have a similar function. So even if you've already bought it, it's really worth updating it and looking at it again.
Oh, absolutely, because it couldn't be. I mean, if you bought it in 2013, which was the first one, it's practically all different at this stage. Yeah. So yeah,
exactly. And that's the thing, things are always moving. And I mean, like, I'm really interested in these other smaller markets. Like we said, the global, I think in 2016 we'll be looking, I feel that 2015 has turned into almost the year of global. Like, people are starting to talk about it. Like last year was kind of the audio year. This year's started to be non-exclusive, going wide, going global, not translations, let's forget translations for now, but you know, that really looking at what are the other smaller markets. Like the Tolino in Germany, for example, owns more than 50% of the market according to some things. You know, so this is what's so interesting, and that's why it will keep being updated. So that's really cool. You also wanted to mention some very exciting, right, or talking about global, talking about rights. So what's happening there?
Yeah, I completely agree with you about this being the year where people started to think global. And we're really seeing a pattern now with our members. You know, when people start self-publishing, they're thinking about production. How do I get this book out? And then, you know, once they've kind of mastered all of that, they start thinking about promotion. How do I reach the reader? How do I sell this book? And when they've mastered that, they start thinking about rights. I own this intellectual property. What else can I do with it? And so for our professional members, we have just, we'll be announcing it fully in a while, but just to let the people who are listening in here have an advance news that we are going to be compiling an ALLi member rights guide, which Toby Mundy, our the literary agent that we're working with, will be taking to London Book Fair and Frankfurt Book Fair twice a year, to start with anyway. And, you know, Toby's talking about this in the sense that he wants to make this an event in the publishing calendar in the industry, so that people, you know, turn and see what, you know, who's bringing out what in ALLi. To start, it's for those professional members who are selling, you know, if it's a standalone book, about 50,000 copies in the last year and a half. And if it's a series, you know, taking in KU and KOL, essentially high sellers, people who are doing well and whose sales are rising. So we're starting there with this particular service. And for those who are not yet at that stage, or who write books that won't be selling in those numbers, we also have IPR license is a rights service that's been around for a long time, and a number of our members, you know, are members of IPR as well. But there's difficulty really in knowing exactly how to use the service, but also just in evaluating yourself in terms of rights potential. What books work in rights? Who's looking for what? You know, what should go where? And so IPR, who already give ALLi members a very nice discount, have also agreed that they will do a special one-to-one for all our members who are interested, who are on their platform, and a consultancy essentially, where they will evaluate your books for their rights potential and give you an actual report and tell you how to best exploit the rights potential that you have. So we're delighted about that, and we're really looking forward to working with lots of our members next year and seeing people selling more rights. So
yeah, and I'm totally up for that. I'm really up for that. And this is the other thing I want to say about ALLi, and thank you, Orna, for all you do, because it's not it. While we also offer a lot for beginner, new self-published authors who don't know how to self-publish yet, there's also still stuff for me as, you know, as somebody who is quite, you know, has a full-time business doing this. I still get a lot out of my membership, and you're always finding new things. So I think whatever level that people are, and this is not a sales pitch, this is for members, but I'm always like, wow, that's really cool that there's more stuff. There's always more stuff. That's what's cool, and it's scary for some people, obviously, but there's always more we can do, and I think that's really exciting. So I'm looking forward to seeing what we can do with rights next year. I really think the maturity of the industry is at this point now where you know, we can stand alongside traditionally published authors and sell many more rights potentially, because often they don't even get the chance to exploit them. So
well, that's right. I mean, a lot of authors are selling, you know, selling their rights, selling world rights, not thinking about the potential that's embedded in their rights. And one of the things that we'll be really keen to do through this process is the whole education thing around rights and how important they are. And you just never know what's the thing that's going to go off. So you should never license your rights to anybody who doesn't have a clear plan for them. And that includes yourself. You know, you also need to have a plan for it too if you're going to go into this area. So we'll be talking lots and lots about it anyway, but I just wanted to let you know.
So we'll come back to that. We'll come back to that at the end of January, probably. We'll have more of an idea of dates around that. So I mean, talking about publishing, and again, obviously once you've done it a few times, it becomes quite easy. So I got up this morning and I published Risen Gods, which is the co-written book I've done with Jay Thorne. I published Co-Writing a Book, which is our co-written book on co-writing. It's very meta. We just thought we might as well. And that contains the writing diary, which I've never done before. You know, Jay and I didn't speak, like, even on Skype or anything. We just kept Google Docs and we wrote in it every day. And you can see my anxiety and my control freakery and my utter terror at someone reading my first draft. I mean, it was hardcore. So we've included, we didn't edit it, we just put in some excerpts from our diary into that book. So I hope people find that useful. And I made a decision, and it's been talking about being scared. I put up an assetless pre-order. So if people don't know what that is, so a pre-order is obviously you put a book up for sale before it's published, but assetless pre-order means you put it up well in advance. So you don't normally, I would do a pre-order where I already had the book written. I've just put up an assetless pre-order for the end of March for Destroyer of Worlds, which is the next in the Arcane series. And of course I'm freaking out because it means I have to deliver then, and it should be fine, but you don't need a cover, you don't need a description other than something basic, you don't need a book, and you can do that on iBooks, Kobo, Nook, and the other services through Draft2Digital and Smashwords. And the reason I went ahead, if other people are considering it, and I've done a little poll, and the main reason is people are scared, as I have been scared. But Dan from Draft2Digital and Mark Coker from Smashwords have said that the best sellers on iBooks, Nook, and Kobo all work with assetless pre-orders ages in advance, because all of the sales rack up over time, and then you get double sales count, basically sales when it sells pre-order and sales when it publishes, whereas Amazon doesn't. So that is a big thing for me, so a first.
Good for you.
I know, and it just
always
feels
challenging yourself. You're
I know, really weird. But just to say to people, publishing those 3 books on, well, I go direct on Amazon, Kobo, iBooks, and then Draft2Digital. So 4 platforms, so 12 publishing versions, took about an hour and a half with all the testing and stuff. So that's what can happen once you're actually more confident with the process, even if you're doing something you're scared of.
Fantastic. And it does get easier. I mean, that's the thing that we can't say often enough for people who are starting out. And, you know, self-publishing isn't that old, and we both remember when, well, I certainly do. I am less technologically able than you, and I remember being completely terrified and not having a clue what I was doing and making all sorts of mistakes at the beginning. But it does settle down, and you just stay there, and then you don't even think about that part of it anymore. You're thinking much more about sales and other parts of the publishing process. Production becomes second nature after a while. So yeah, don't give up.
No, right, good. Okay, so let's do the questions. Ton of questions this week. Let's start with Patricia. Says, I'm just finishing off a round of edits. I'm about to do a promo on Bookbub. I have some questions. Well, it's not really a question. It says, I have some questions around pricing and also about scheduling other promo sites to carry on after that. I think the question is, if I have get a Bookbub, what else should I be doing? And I can talk to this because I just got a Bookbub. So what you want to do, and the thing is, there are regularly updated sites. So just Google, free or reduced price, sale price, promo price ebooks, and I normally change my search term so it's the last month, because there are always new lists coming up, and you'll find the latest list of all the other sites where you can submit. So what I've done is, once you get a Bookbub, yes, the idea is to try and schedule some other things around that to boost either beforehand, so you can start the wave, or afterwards so you can continue the wave. So I've booked another 3 promotions on my perma-free around that Bookbub date in order to try and keep it going a bit longer. So we all know that a Bookbub will be a spike and then it will drop. But if you have another promo, it might keep it higher for a bit longer. And I also think that this is the best way to get things moving on Apple, iBooks and Nook. So make sure when you book these other promotions that you're using your links for all those other sites if you have gone wide. And the other thing I should say is that Free Booksy and Bargain Booksy, same company, now have a series promotion. So this is brilliant. If you do write a series and you have a free first in series, you can now buy a whole series promotion with Free Booksy. So I've done that as well to try and just boost the whole thing. And these, this just gets more people into your funnel, hopefully more people on your email list. And obviously you don't make money when it's free, but you should see some follow through into your other higher priced books. So do you have anything to add on that one?
No, I think you've covered it nicely.
Good. Well, you can answer the next one then. Okay. Laura asks, has anyone had experience with Kirkus and been listed on their best indie books of the year? And also, has anyone had experience advertising books in the leading edge review? So this is a question really about paid review sites, I think.
Yeah. Well, paid review sites. If you're looking for a commercial return, for your payment, you are very, very likely to be disappointed. The best of the paid review sites will themselves tell you that essentially what they're doing is maybe making an author feel validated as an author, and giving them something that perhaps they'll be able to go and take out there, and add as a bit of blurb onto their book or whatever. ALLi generally has a big question mark over reviews for payment. And again, this is one of these questions that in the indie world gets debated a lot. Amy Edelman from Indie Reader, who is one of the companies that does provide a paid review site, and I did a head-to-head on the Self-Publishing Advice blog about this, where Amy spoke, very sensibly about the fact that reviewers must eat, and in the traditional world they were paid by newspapers or magazines to produce their review, but that can't happen here, and somebody has to pay, and so on and so forth. I still though Indie Reader is a member, they provide other services. We don't have anybody who's a member of ALLi who just does payment for review. Everybody who does that service is also doing something else. And in general, I would say don't spend money on that, because unless you're very clear, I'm doing it. A bit like the author who wrote on Self-Publishing Advice blog today about hiring a publicist. She spent £3,000. Her aim was not to get that £3,000 back in sales, but she just wanted to do it for all sorts of personal reasons. Okay, it's your money, you want to do that, absolutely fine. But if you think that by having a review in Kirkus, which can cost a lot of money,
like $500 or something.
It can be significantly more than that, depending on what you want. I mean, these are essentially very good business models for the businesses, but they are not good business models for the author. And it's the same with Publishers Weekly, Forward Reviews, Blue Ink. They're good magazines, they're good people, they're doing their best to give objective reviews. They're not like the really bad ones who are simply there just to take your money and don't care what kind of a review they give you. Some of them don't even read the books. I'm not talking about that. I'm talking about the very highest end of the market. The other thing that happens is authors spend a lot of money, and sometimes it's as much as over $1,000 for a review, and then they don't like the review.
Yeah.
And, you know, we hear from people a lot. They come to the watchdog saying, I paid, and, you know, the contract was for an independent review, and then the author didn't like it, and they want us to take that up with the service, but the service hasn't done anything wrong.
No.
Right, actually. So, you know, I would say stay clear. What do you think?
I remember, I mean, when I wrote my first book, way back in like 2007, I paid for a Kirkus review. And I know why you do it. You do it because you have nothing else. You don't have any audience. You don't know how to do any marketing. You think that that isn't the option, that is the only option, because you think that getting a review in these things will magically work. And I paid Kirkus, I got a review, and again it's like, oh great, now what? So it's almost I would say, if you have that money to spend, I would spend that on an editor. Because actually for your next book, like if you have the $500 for a Kirkus review, use that to pay for a structural edit of your next novel or non-fiction book. That will serve you better than a paid review, because your writing will become much better, and therefore you will get more reviews over time. I also think there's a feeling when you put and I don't know if this is true of Laura, if this is the first book, but with your first book, you really it's very difficult. And I know we always say the same thing, but once you have more books, you stop worrying so much about reviews, because they just start to happen. Having a perma-free, like if you only have one book, nobody wants to put it on perma-free, but if it ain't moving, you don't lose anything anyway. And it's definitely the way to get reviews. I mean, I've got like 430 reviews or something on Stone of Fire now, which means it always gets a Bookbub, because it looks great and it's 4-star average, and that's only because it's been perma-free for like 3 years. So yeah, I hope that helps. But I remember that feeling. So yeah, we're certainly not dissing that, we're just advising other things.
And do watch out for the service that you choose. And, you know, a lot of services suck you in with a review, and then the next thing it's advertising in a magazine. And we had one member who spent $8,000. She's written a very interesting salutary piece on Self-Publishing Advice blog, whereby she essentially was, you know, she says it herself, her ego was tickled and she was led along, she feels, to sort of invest in something that had absolutely no effect whatsoever on sales. So as always, just kind of work out what is your intention, your motivation, what you want here, and is this actually going to achieve it for you?
I've been writing this book on mindset for ages, and the tagline at the moment is massive ego and chronic self-doubt.
You just described every indie author there.
Well, every author, I think.
Maybe every person who ever lived.
But yeah, these things appeal to the ego. Anyway, Camilla says, box sets, you need at least 3 books to make one, do you, or is 2 enough? What is your experience with box sets? Do they make sense as a marketing tool? I have some opinions on box sets. I just did another one like last week, my trilogy, the London Psychic trilogy. I love single author box sets, are awesome, and you can price them on the other platforms much higher and people will pay more. So I make most of my income at Kobo comes from box sets. So that's really, seriously, if you have 3 books, I don't think 2 is enough. I think 3 or more. Like some people are doing like 7 in the series, 15 books, because on iBooks, Kobo, Nook, and the other stores, you can price over $9.99 and still get the full royalty. So I have a $13.99 box set that's not on Amazon. This is the thing. If you go wide, you can do these things. You can have higher priced product. And people will buy them, like iBooks. People will pay £50 for the entire George R.R. Martin series now. I mean, their readers will pay more. Then multi-author box sets, I've had amazing experience where we hit the New York Times bestseller list and the USA Today. and that was one out of about 4 multi-author box sets, and the rest like completely failed. So I would say it can be good for marketing as a multi-author box set, but I actually think single author box sets are better in terms of income and are well worth doing, and you don't cannibalize other sales, you just reach other readers. So Orna, you've done box sets. What's your experience?
No, I was part of, I haven't done a single author box set, though I will do one by the end of next year. That's an intention. But I was part of an interesting experiment where 8 authors of literary fiction got together and did, just for 12 weeks only, a box set. But I think the lesson that definitely was learned by that group was that you need to price pretty low. And a number, 1 or 2 of the authors in the group were absolutely determined that we weren't going to go below a certain price. And so for that reason, it didn't sell massively. So it wasn't a commercial success. However, it was a brilliant creative success in the sense that we all really enjoyed it. We all, it was a really interesting thing to do. It brought us to new readers who did buy other titles that we'd written, introduced us to each other's audiences, and we were all up for doing it again, I think. So it is something we probably will do again. I think if it's a multi-author project, what I learned from that and from observing so many other people doing it, particularly actually your one, the 30 dozen? No, what was it?
Deadly Dozen.
Deadly Dozen, sorry, yes, the Deadly Dozen. You need to have a driver. You need to have somebody who takes complete responsibility for the project and who is the final arbiter when it comes to people disagreeing, because indie authors disagree all the time about everything.
Yes. That's why we're indie.
If you're looking for majority rule, you may actually end up with most people being disgruntled, ironically. And you need somebody who's a very clear strategy around marketing. How are you going to actually take it out there, and who can whip everybody else? Everybody's busy, everybody's writing their own books. You need somebody who can really kind of kick ass and make sure that things happen when they should. So it's a great adventure. I'd really recommend it. I learned a lot. I'd like to do it again. So yeah, but two is not a box set. No, at least
no, 2 isn't. And I don't mean to pimp our book, but Jay wrangled a 10 author collaboration, and he talks about that. And I also talk about my lessons learned with the multi-author box set. So we talk about co-creation and collaboration as well as co-writing. And I think this is just becoming more and more common in the indie space. So I think this will become, I think the multi-author box set or the multi-author collaboration is entirely different to a single author box set. And like you say, the pricing, we had 99 cents for 12 full-length books with our Deadly Dozen, and it sold like 110,000 copies, and we all made about $1,500. But the aim was never to make money, whereas my single author box sets, the aim is to make money. So it's a really very different ball game. So don't assume that a box set means the same thing every time. But yeah, they're brilliant, and actually only indies can do them, right? Traditionally published authors can't do them, so it's a real advantage. Yeah,
you're back into the rights thing. Yeah, it's owning your own rights and what it allows you to do. And I think the retailers too are really waking up to the potential. Again, it's another example where indie authors have gone ahead, made something happen, and now retailers and other people are going, oh, this is a great idea. Authors should do this.
Yeah. And, like novellas, which are everywhere now. Even the big authors like Lee Child are being forced to do novellas in between their books. Fun. Anyway, moving on. Camilla also says, translating is the new black, which I think is brilliant because it does seem like everyone's talking about translation. But how do you assess the translated work? And are Babel Cube translators screened at the source, or can everyone self-proclaim being a translator and sign up? So I'll start because also Profanación in Spanish came out this week. So I've done another translation, and I'll be honest with you all. I've had translations out for the last 18 months and I have lost money, even though I didn't even pay for it. We did a 50-50 split, but because of covers, print formatting, marketing, etc. So I have heard of indies who are making very good money with translations, but they number less than one hand, seriously. And one of them is a speaker in that language, so does her own translation. So I don't think translation is the new black. I really don't. I think beware, really beware. It's massive amounts of work. Even if you're not the one doing the translation, you have to wrangle the translator. And it's, yeah, anyway, I now will say that I would rather sell my foreign rights than work with translation. I'm just finishing off. Although, to be fair, I have How to Market a Book coming out in French with a French guy who has a website about self-publishing. So he has a market, he can do the marketing, but it's super, super difficult. So I would say, Camilla, first off, be very, very careful about translation and only do it if you have a marketing plan and it's worth the investment. I know Babelcube is a royalty share thing, but I think the only other person I've seen it work for is non-fiction, where the translation is much clearer. With fiction, it's much more nuanced, so it's very difficult. So that's my writer beware thing on translation. What do you think, Orna?
Yeah, translation's very tricky, always was, and Camilla, you've put your finger on one of the big issues, of course, is the quality of the translation, which is something, you know, you don't speak the language, that's why you're getting a translator, so how do you know that the translation is good, bad, or indifferent? There is one service in ALLi that we think is excellent, but it's very expensive, and she would say that that's Athena Pape, and it's literary translations. I'll have to look it up. I can put it on the call afterwards, put the link. But Athena is brilliant to speak to, and she will be a contributor to the book that Helen Sedgwick and I are working on, How Authors Sell Rights. And she, you know, sees the process through to marketing and also to overseeing the quality. So both the writer and the translator enter into a contract with each other, which this company oversees. And because that's the other thing, is that people very often, you know, it's not the easiest of collaborations to make work. So I think both print and translations actually, I think, are better handled as sub-rights for indies, and waiting until you get to the point where somebody is interested in buying at that level, I think makes more sense at the moment than trying to do it yourself, unless you're absolutely committed to seeing your book in a certain foreign language because you have a burning desire for that. I would say steer clear for now.
Yeah, I think it's too early, and I'm so guilty of jumping in early on things and then suffering for it, and I definitely did it on this one. So let me take the flak and don't. I mean, it's even just that even if you get a perfect translation, the ebook market in these other countries is super small. So even if you get your book translated into French and it's a perfect translation, the ebook market in France is something like 1%. So you won't even sell very many books. So I would just, and they're very, anti a lot of things in France. So it's very difficult to even get traction, even if you have a perfect translation. So yeah, I think we're early. When the ebook sales in a territory or a country starts getting over 10%, maybe then it's worth it. Like Germany, for example, the people who are making good money doing well in Germany, but I'm not. The other thing I would say on this is, if you end up with first in series translated, we said it before, if you have one book, no one's going to buy that book. So you actually need to invest in more than one book translated in order to actually be able to market things. So it is like starting again.
Yeah, and if you thought about that money and putting that into, some sort of marketing for your book in English in other territories, I think that will be money far better spent than translating it into another language.
Yes, and of course, I've sold books in English in 68 countries now. So that, to me, is the better investment. Yeah, write more books and sell them in English for now. Okay. Sandy, Jane, I'd like to sell individual short stories very cheap in EPUB format from my website. I already sell print versions of my books on my website using PayPal. I'm working towards an anthology and will get an ISBN for that, but haven't got enough stories yet. Meanwhile, how can I protect each short story? All I can think of is encrypting each one and supplying the customer with a unique password. Is this idea a runner? So this is a question about, I guess it's a copyright protection of selling short stories directly from the website.
Yeah, which is copyright's another one of these minefields that indies argue about all the time. But I would say, you know, definitely if you're at a stage where you're building up stories for an anthology, so you're building towards your first book, I wouldn't be worrying too much about protecting your work. Certainly the suggestion you make is perfectly possible. There are ways to encrypt your site, and you can invest in those if you wish. But for most writers, the problem is not people making off with their good ideas or making off with their fine prose. It's actually reaching enough readers to make this worthwhile. So you're already selling in print. When somebody buys your work in print, they can pass it on to whoever they want to. In fact, they will. I mean, we all do. We lend the books that we love to people. And, you know, this thing about ebook piracy, there is a completely contrary argument that says piracy is actually good for your sales. And so I would give it no thought at this time. I would just work hard on writing and getting your work out there, and, you know, ask in the forum about this question, and you will get all the links that will tell you, you know, the different ways you could think about it, and perhaps you find yourself thinking slightly differently. We have a section on copyright in the book about rights, and having watched loads of people talk about this and debated from both sides, I actually think that copyright, while it was instigated to protect the rights of creators, has in many cases been used to stifle the relationship between writers and readers as often as it has actually protected the writer. And a lot of in-between people have actually benefited more from copyright than writers have. And I also think a lot of writers want to give their work out there. They want to have readers, and you know, that kind of spontaneous impulse to write lots and put lots out there is actually much healthier for a creator than trying to protect and be protectionist about something that really actually you can't do, because any hacker worth their salt will break your encryption code, you know, before breakfast if they put their mind to it. So I would think of it as something not to spend a lot of time thinking about at this stage.
Okay, Sandy says, how do I get, and I'm not quite sure, this is capitalized, so I'm not quite sure what it means. How do I get new indie book release listed? And how do I get my book featured as indie release? Basically, I don't know whether this is an Amazon. Amazon doesn't have a new indie book release. Yeah, do you know what this means?
She's not asking about Member Showcase.
Maybe.
Yeah.
Do you want to tell us about Member Showcase? Because that's changed quite recently, hasn't it?
Yeah, maybe that's ALLi members who have a new release, or indeed have any news or anything interesting that they want to share with the world, are invited to submit that through the Self-Publishing Advice blog, submit their news to Member Showcase. You'll find the submission form there, and top right-hand corner of the selfpublishingadvice.org blog. Before, we used to ask people to send it in and Karen used to put it together for us, but now there is a submission form, and Debbie oversees the process. So maybe that's what she's talking about. I'm not sure. It doesn't ring any bells outside of that.
Yeah. Sorry, Sandy, if you meant something else, please try again with a bit more detail, and we will try and answer that. Then we had a couple of questions from a lovely lady who is not a member of ALLi, and although we love to share these recordings with people who are not members, only members can ask questions of this particular Q&A. Although we must point out that one of the questions was, how do I make friends with other indie authors? And all we can do is say, we're here, the Alliance of Independent Authors. Join us. Isn't it absolutely brilliant? This is one of the benefits, as you get to ask questions. And also our private Facebook group, which is for members only. Lots of stuff shared there. And again, I learn stuff there regularly about random stuff. You know, particularly print. I'm not big into print, and I always find out new things about print tricks that way. Anything else on that, Orna?
No, but as we're talking about print, there's a question coming through from Mary Lynn, so maybe we'll just put that in as we're talking about print. I am a new author and need some advice on where to start with the publishing process. I'm talking about printed books. They are illustrated and written primarily with dyslexic children in mind, but they do have a much wider appeal. So I'll just start, and then maybe you can put in your tuppence halfpenny worth. I would say that if you are talking about starting the self-publishing process with printed books, you are making life very difficult for yourself. So one of the first things that we say in How to Choose a Self-Publishing Service is to think digital and to first think about ebooks, because it is only the existence of a global audience and the inexpensive nature of relatively inexpensive nature of putting together an ebook that makes it viable to be an indie author, to actually get a return on your money and to be able to reinvest. And that print is very much a secondary, or perhaps even a tertiary. Maybe audiobooks would come before print now for some people. Sure, you can do print on demand, but for illustrated books with a very particular audience, unless you have a sort of a back of the room sales scenario, which you might do as they are for dyslexic children, perhaps you work within that field or lecture within that field, in which case you would prepare files. And the question is too big to be covered here in a short answer. But if you take a look at some of the guidebooks and follow through some of the process, it can be done. But I wouldn't expect to see a financial return on it for some time.
Yeah, and so have a look at Kindle Kids ebook creator, which is the Kindle specific for kids. And of course, this Christmas they're pushing the kids Kindle with this bouncy frame, and it's free to get a new one if it gets broken by the kids. So, and of course iBooks have iBooks Author, where you can do beautiful iPad versions. You can use blurb.com have a automatic iPad version creator. So don't think that don't think it just has to be print. Then if you do want to do it, then Karen Inglis is in ALLi, and she has on her website, Inglis, INGLIS, has a whole load of stuff on self-publishing children's picture books. So I always send people to Karen because she's done it, and she will definitely say herself that it's not a money-making enterprise. It is a love enterprise. But she's also doing apps and other things. So well worth having a look at that, as neither Orna or I write children's books. And
I have to say that children's is a very specific area. We have a few children's writers that we couldn't manage without Karen, who is our children's advisor. She's absolutely fantastic and so generous with her time, and she has sold far more than most authors who've been trade published, purely through commitment and going out to schools and going into Waterstones and basically getting in touch with the children and their parents. And she works really, really hard and for everybody. So yeah, you would have the benefit of her advice as an ALLi member. So again, if we had a little bit more information, Mary Lynn, then we can help more. So pop into the forum anytime and we can continue the conversation.
Okay, we're running out of time, but Michael, we have a writing craft question, which is awesome. I know. I know. Well, this could be a long one then. Michael says, how do you make your characters seem unique? There you go. It's a big question, isn't it?
Well, the key to unique in craft is to go deeply into yourself and your own personal experience. So one trick that I learned years ago that works well for me, I think, in terms of certainly making the character come alive for me, and then, you know, me being able to kind of pin things onto them, is to psychoanalyze them. So I laid them out on the sofa and asked them all sorts of questions about things that will never appear in the book, but deepen my knowledge of the character. And then I think you have to have a bit of yourself in the character, some aspect of yourself, preferably probably some part of yourself that you're not particularly fond of or proud of or whatever. That sort of connection with a character, I think, and digging back into your memory experience, I think, can be very useful. Yeah. Have you any tips?
Well, my tip would be, I have on my phone, and you can keep it on wherever you want, but I have a folder on my Things app, which I have on my phone, which is just fiction stuff that I notice in the world. So like, you know, I really got into bonsai. I think curiosity is very powerful, and I really got into bonsai trees. You can always tell what I'm interested in by the book that I've written at the time, because I had one bad guy in my book Crypt of Bone who's really into bonsais, and these the idea of the scapegoat tree, the sin tree, where you hammer nails into a tree, and I combine these two. So the bad guy, when he does bad stuff like ritually murder children and stuff, he goes and hammers nails into his bonsai. Now that's quite original, actually, and that just came from things that I see and am interested in the world. I don't have a bonsai, but I just did a bit of research into bonsai and then put it in his basement, you know. So this bad guy has a bonsais in his basement with nails in. And that's literally just from research and thinking, oh, that's interesting. So it doesn't necessarily have to come from you. I think the emotional and the response stuff can, but having interesting little snippets and stuff you can get from anywhere. So write down stuff, I think, is important.
Definitely keep notes, and I would consider that having a connection with you, in the sense that what I was kind of saying not to do by inference was, don't say, oh, I'm now going to hang a unique thing onto my character for the sake of making it unique. In other words, you had that genuine connection with the bonsai thing. It led to an imaginative process. There are three kind of forms of research for any aspect of fiction or for any aspect of writing. They're either research of facts, things that actually can be found on Professor Google. There's research of your memory, which is very powerful and very useful. And I think one of the reasons why a lot of us write fiction is because it makes us actually remember more of our lives. And then, of course, research of the imagination. So, you know, but it must have, I think, you must be genuinely interested. You must genuinely think this is cool, and not just be doing it for the sake of trying to create a unique character. That just won't work, which I think you've already found, because you wouldn't be asking the question otherwise.
Yeah, and the point is, it's not always you. You know, that's the thing. Okay, and Helen asks, what is the best way to get reviews on Amazon, and is Amazon still the primary place to get reviews, and what constitutes a decent number of reviews? This interesting about Amazon and reviews, because I asked Dan this at Draft to Digital, and you know, because I don't get the sense that any other site it's as important. Like even iBooks, which does have some sense that reviews are important, it doesn't seem to be as important. And certainly Kobo and Nook are more about merchandising, even though they have reviews, doesn't seem to make any difference. So yes, Amazon's still the place. And as we mentioned earlier, free, perma-free, or just a free promotion is a really good way to get reviews. You have to send stuff to your readers. So I have, they're called my pen friends, my fiction reader list. And I have, you know, a number of people there, and they all got Risen Gods a few days ago, so that some of them may end up writing reviews, honest reviews, not paying for reviews, just people who get the book for free. And traditional publishing do this. You are allowed to give away advanced reader copies and ask for reviews. That's completely fine. It's, you know, it's not, you're just not saying they have to be 5-star or anything. You're letting people do honest reviews. But those are, I think, the only two ways really, if you're not going to pay for them, is that they have to be free, and they have to be to people who like your type of book, really.
And don't pay for them. whatever you do, do not go on to Fiverr and buy people who will review your book for you, because you know that just people know, everybody knows, and it will backfire. And anyway, it's completely unethical
and unnecessary. Just a bit of patience, and they happen. They actually will happen if you do some of these other marketing things. But as ever, one book is very difficult to move. And yeah, I mean, it's very interesting. I put book 1 on free when I had 3 books. But I wonder, that was 2 years after the first book came out. So I wonder now, like, you know, how much further would I be if I just embraced it, you know, at the time, and built an email list earlier and all that. And I understand all the fear people have and the worry, and it's tough, but you know, you do get reviews, don't you, Orna? I mean,
Absolutely.
Even on more literary fiction.
Oh yeah, you do, and more. I'm just blown away sometimes by the trouble that people go to in writing. Some of the reviews on my books are absolutely wonderful, and the kind of reviews that people would have paid, you know, newspapers would pay to have. You do get, and more readers are now understanding more that authors like reviews. They are also becoming more empowered, I think, as well. You know, writers are more empowered by all the changes that are going on, but so are readers, and they're feeling that their opinion counts. They're less shy about saying what they actually really did think. So yeah, they will certainly happen. There is, you know, if you're putting out the work and you're giving it to enough people, you will get reviews without a doubt.
Yeah, just might take a bit of time at the beginning.
It will take time. Everything in this business takes time. Let's end on that note. This at the end of 2015.
Yeah, everything takes time.
Don't be impatient. Impatience spoils the indie author journey more than any other characteristic. Take your time. It's a long game. It takes a long time to learn how to be good enough to write a good book, and then it takes a while to learn how to publish well enough to be a good publisher. And take that time. Take the time you need. Make mistakes, learn from those, do it better the next time, and then that just goes on and on.
Yeah, because what else are we going to do? I mean, seriously, this is like the most fun. This is the most fun thing. It might be a pain, but it's also the most fun thing. So yes, we will be. Is there anything you want to say about December, or we'll just be back in January?
Yeah, we'll be back in January with a Q&A on our normal last Tuesday of the month. And tomorrow night we have an unusual extra ALLi Insights, where I'm going to be talking to Toby Mundy about this new ALLi member rights guide that's going out to the world through London Book Fair first. So we would need to get the submissions for that by January 1st. So anybody who's interested in knowing more about literary agency, rights, how they're sold, even if you're not at that stage yet, you might be interested in hearing Toby. He's very experienced. He was a publisher himself in an indie pub, Atlantic Books in the UK, published some Booker Prize winners and lots of really interesting non-fiction. He's on the Samuel Johnson non-fiction board. He's a very interesting person, steeped in writing and reading, and I know you're going to enjoy hearing what he has to say. So that's tomorrow evening at the same time, 8 p.m. London time.
On, what is it, Wednesday the 25th of November.
Thank you for the fact check. Yes.
At 8 p.m. London.
So somebody else who's watching this in 2 days' time won't be watching it tomorrow. Thank you.
Okay, all right. Well, happy holiday season, everybody. And we will see you 25th of January, and no doubt on the socials, or tomorrow night.
Or tomorrow. And hope you sell lots and lots of books over the holiday season. Hope you get lots of writing time also. And thank you for being with us. Good night.
Bye.
Bye.